All right, we're gonna call the meeting to order, and the meeting is being recorded in accordance with 940 CMR 29.10, remote participation adopted by the Greater Lowell Technical School Committee, April 17, 2014. Committeeman O'Hare will be participating in tonight's meeting remotely. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Moran?
Yeah.
Mr. O'Hare?
Here.
Mr. LeMay?
Here.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yeah.
Mr. Getchia?
Yeah.
Mr. Bahu? Mr. Tatsias? Mr. Gigi?
Here. Committeeman LeMay, are there any persons that would like to speak at the meeting tonight?
We have no one signed up, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any school committee communications? At this time, I'd like to turn it over to the student representative who's participating remotely tonight. Tom, you there?
I'm here, thank you.
You're welcome to
I'll try my best
bring forth the
I'll try
presentation.
my best not to cough through this.
Okay.
Skills USA completed school-wide technical assessments in December, and results were announced earlier this month. In addition, Skills USA hosted their annual Community Outreach Challenge in conjunction with our 8th grade open house in January. Painting and design, information technology services, and marketing all took prizes for their interactive stations that emphasize the essential element of teamwork. They are now turning our planning to Skills USA Week in February, which will feature their in-house award ceremony, Double Good Popcorn virtual fundraiser, and other fun activities. The National Technical Honor Society and National Honor Society held a coat drive as part of Anton's Coats for Kids and Families. Members decorated donation boxes and hung up posters to advertise the event. Through their efforts, they collected more than 60 coats to donate to children and families in need. Dance Club is in the process of planning their first annual spring showcase, which will be held in May. Members are choreographing their own original routines and currently have 10 dances that they are perfecting. The club is also reaching out to other dancers at Greater Lowell Tech to invite them to make cameo appearances in the show. The Anime Club is focusing on researching the animation and technology behind new games. Students are choosing the gaming systems, new games, and movies they want to research in small groups. Students will present their findings to other groups in a future meeting. This activity has turned into a true learning experience, which also helps keep everyone up to date on the newest technology. The Nebc Bio Club, in cooperation with the Science Department, prepared and distributed almost 90 hands-on science kits at the January open house. Our 8th grade visitors were able to go home with their own Build-A-Catapult kit and experiment with energy and motion. The yearbook has finalized their cover art and is now working on the content pages. The deadline to submit senior portraits has passed, and their focus has shifted to building the remainder of the book. The goal is to have yearbooks printed and ready for distribution at graduation rehearsal in early June. The Environmental Club continues to lead our recycling pickup program each week. Members are doing a great job getting the word out to more teachers, and participation in the program is growing. The Guided Bible Club members have been reading and interpreting scripture and various stories in the Bible. Most recently, they have read about Joseph and his amazing Technicolor coat. Members offered some interesting and varied interpretations of the lessons in this story. And from the athletic department, the boys and girls basketball are both rounding into form as they head towards the midway point of their seasons. The boys came out strong right from the opener and currently sport an impressive 6-2 record. Recent league wins over Lowell Catholic and Whittier followed an impressive showing in the Greater Lawrence Holiday Tournament, where the boys captured the championship with a win over Ipswich in the finals. After a slow start, the girls have gotten going as of late, with 3 straight victories over Notre Dame, Whittier, and Essex Tech, evening the team's record at 4-4. Wrestling has battled through their always difficult schedule. The Griffin Grapplers had strong showings at the annual Wilmington Sons of Italy tournament, as well as the George Vossi Holiday Tournament at UMass Lowell. The team will look to have another strong showing at the annual state vocational meet on January 29th. Indoor track has run well this winter, with a number of Griffin runners posting state qualifying times in a number of events. The team is positioned to be one of the top contenders at the CAC League meet being held in February. Swim and dive has pulled out consecutive wins over league opponents Northeast and Greater Lawrence. The team will look to have a strong showing at the annual CAC League meet being held on February 3rd. And the Griffin cheerleaders are gearing up for what should be a successful competition season, which will begin later this month. The squad has also done a great job performing at basketball games this season. This concludes the report.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Thomas.
And didn't even cough.
Thanks, Tommy.
Thank you, Tom.
Have a good night.
You too, thank you.
Can I have an approval of the minutes, please?
So
Motion,
moved. Second?
roll call?
Mr. Moran?
Yeah.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Here.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes. We have the report of the treasurer. Can I have a motion to waive the reading?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call?
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes. Can I have a motion to approve the expenditures of $4,902,587.14? Have a motion. Second? Second. Roll call?
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes. I don't see Mike McCarroll, so there's no report of the general counsel. We're on to the superintendent.
Thank you. The first item on my agenda this evening is to inform the committee that Greater Lowell has been awarded a Career and Technical Education Partnership Planning Grant in the amount of $14,475. The grant award will be used to plan for After Dark for the 22-23 school year. We will be moving forward with our information technology program and automotive technology and planning to add HVACR to the After Dark programming for 22-23.
Very good.
The next item on my agenda is the Cooperative Education Report. In the report that was provided in your packet, it indicates 164 senior students participating in our cooperative education program as the end of December. However, I'm happy to report, as of date, there are 170 senior students participating in co-op, which is approximately 33% of the class of 2022. A copy of the December Cooperative Education Report is in your packet, and Mrs. Bezanson will be working with our junior students at the end of January to begin to place them out on cooperative education. The next item on my agenda is to provide you an update on the current general health and safety protocols here at Greater Lowell, and there have been some changes. On December 30th, the protocols for responding to COVID-19 were updated by the Commissioner of Education, and we have since updated those protocols in our health and safety manual and have posted them on our school website. Just to talk a little bit about what those changes were. Those changes involve changes to isolation and quarantining. For symptomatic individuals who test positive, the isolation period was revised from 10 days to 5 days, and individuals can return on day 6 if they're without a fever, improvement in their symptoms, and they need to continue to be masked for 5 days after they return. For asymptomatic close contacts who were involved in our test and stay program, the time period that they need to be given the rapid antigen test and test and stay shifted from 7 days to 5 days to reflect the general changes. And then close contacts who are asymptomatic, there was a shift from a 7-day quarantine to a 5-day quarantine, and they're able to return on day 6. So those were the changes to the general health and safety protocols. The exceptions remain the same. fully vaccinated asymptomatic people are exempt. Classroom contacts, if wearing a mask and at least 3 feet apart, bus closed contacts, they all remained the same. An additional change to the health and safety protocols was on January 6th. The governor issued a public health emergency order that may have an impact on our students in the health and medical programs or out on clinical. They are now required to get a booster, and that will go into effect on February 29th. Eligible students are required to have a booster. That may impact some of the students that are out in clinical placements in long-term healthcare facilities, in hospice care facilities. They will need to get a booster when they are eligible, and that begins on February 29th. On January 10th, the Commissioner of Education extended the mask mandate. So we are now required to continue to wear a mask in the school setting until February 28th, and that will remain into effect. They are currently looking at the data, and if there are any further changes, I will keep you posted. But the mask mandate is until February 28th. On January 18th, which is just this week, the Department of Education, the Department of Public Health, and the Executive Office of Health and Human Services developed a new COVID-19 testing program option for K through 12 schools. And I just want to review briefly what that option entails. So currently we are part of the state testing program, and our current program consists of diagnostic testing, which means that if a student or staff who is part of this program, who signed consent to be part of this program, becomes symptomatic while in school, we are able to test them to see if they're positive. If they were to test positive, they would be sent home immediately. So that's diagnostic testing. That's what we're currently doing. We are also doing routine COVID pool testing, or what they call safety checks. We're doing that once a week for whoever is part of the testing program. We usually do that on Thursdays, and it's school-based, and on Fridays, we retest anyone who came back in a pool that tested positive. And we are currently doing contact tracing and test and stay. Test and stay for asymptomatic close contacts means if someone was reported as a close contact and they don't have symptoms, they can remain in school, and we would test them for 5 days, consecutively. And as long as they tested negative, they can continue here at school. With the new testing program that the state is proposing, there is a shift. So what would be the same is that we would continue to do our pool testing. We would continue to do our diagnostic or symptomatic testing for those who would develop symptoms in school. What would be different would be those who opted into the program would now be provided with an at-home rapid antigen test that they would take once a week. So that would be provided by the state to us. We would distribute these test kits bi-weekly, because each test kit would contain 2 tests within them, and they would be required to test every week. And if their test would be positive, they would report that to the school as well as to their physician. This would only occur if we chose to be part of this new testing program. Another change, in addition to the test kit, would be that we would discontinue test and stay in contact tracing.
So in other words, if someone tests positive out of that pool, we just grab that person that's positive, test, home, the rest are fine? Is that what we're?
So that's different from pool testing.
Okay.
Our pool testing will continue. Pool testing is not changed in this option.
All right, I just want to make sure.
Diagnostic testing is the same.
Right.
Pool testing is the same.
Okay.
The difference is the contact tracing and the test and stay for asymptomatic close contacts. We would no longer be doing that. So if someone were to test positive for COVID and identify a student as being a close contact, if they were asymptomatic and part of our current testing program, we would do test and stay. And as long as they continue to be asymptomatic and tested negative for 5 days as
Right.
we tested them, they could remain in school.
Okay,
In this new program, test and stay would now be eliminated. And contact tracing would be eliminated, and replacing that would be, those who opted in would be provided with an at-home test kit to test weekly. They would also have the option to be part of pool testing weekly, and they would also have the option that if they got sick in school, to be tested.
So can we choose to waive that last?
So it's one or the other. So it's, we continue what we're doing, or we opt to shift to this new program that the state is recommending. At this time, I think we have between tomorrow and April 1st to make a decision to shift to this new program.
Is what we're doing working well for the school?
So I think right now, before we make any decisions, we as a school need to look at our own data. We need to do some surveys to other school community members, and then put that all together before we make a decision. So at this time tonight, because this meeting happened to occur this week, when I was informed with this information on Tuesday, I thought it would be the time to let you know that this is an option, but I'm asking for more time to review our school data, do some surveys to our staff and our parents before we as a school community make a decision to shift what we're doing.
so basically, Joe, we could basically wait, if I'm hearing you right, to the March meeting before we have to make up our mind.
Yeah, we can opt into the program anywhere between January 21st and April 1st.
Is it mandatory that we opt in before April 1st?
So that's when the opt-in time shuts down.
Opt in or choose not to opt in?
Opt in or choose not to opt in.
Okay.
So if we, or continue doing what we're doing,
Yeah, we should really
or
explore
complete the opt-in form and opt in as
I
a
don't want to see how
school.
the nurses feel.
We want to know how everybody.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Was this is through the governor's office?
So when I say the Department of Education, the Department of Public Health
Yep.
are recommending this. So they're basing it on data. So they're looking at the data, they looked at data in over 2,000 schools across the state that were currently using the test and stay program. And what they found when they looked at that data, that over 90% of the close contacts in the testing stay program tested negative. And when they looked at it nationwide, they found that close contacts in school revealed a transmission rate of 0.7 to 1.5%. So they're really concluding that individuals identified as asymptomatic close contacts have really been negative.
So during the process, my understanding is they tried to push everything down to the local level. Now they're trying to pull it back to the upper level. And I think it's in our position here at the school, we've been doing a pretty good job. So we probably want to do our surveys and figure out.
Yeah, I think before
what's best for this
we
district.
shift and make a transition, we really have to do some surveys and look at our own data and then make it an informed decision.
Is
So
it-
I thought it would be appropriate to share that information with you tonight, and then we can continue to discuss it at our next meeting, and hopefully I'll have some more information to share with the committee to help us make a more informed decision.
And you're gonna do that by surveys and.
We're gonna do
Talk
some
to the team.
surveys, and we're gonna look at our own data, yes, and talk to the team. I think, our whole school community needs to be included, and get their feedback in regards to this transition.
Is there anybody that disagrees with that here in the committee?
And how do you feel that what we're currently doing is working out? Is it too cumbersome with this option that the state gives us a little bit, keep us a little bit less busy, or are you comfortable with where you're at this moment?
So I don't think it's a matter of being busy, because I think what we need to do what's right. to keep our school community safe. I think we have to look at the data and see what the next step is, which would be the best approach. But I understand what they're saying here, that the test and stay and the close contacts that were asymptomatic in schools turned out mostly to be negative. And I think they're moving to a more surveillance approach by providing staff and families who opt in with at-home test kits to use on a weekly basis. So in actuality, if there is a shift to this new program, individuals would be able to test at home using the test kit. They also have the option to participate in pool testing in the school building. So it's almost like testing 2 times a week. Again, it's opt-in. So even as a school, if we shifted and made the decision to adopt this new testing program, individual families and staff members will have a choice to opt into it.
What is the percentage here at the school of the persons or staff that have opted in to be part of the testing?
So right now, we have close to 500 people that are part of pool testing.
Out of 2,800?
Yeah, at about 2,800, yes.
And then what kind of security are with this home testing? Because again, there's a certain skill level for administering the test and supervision and accountability. Are there any concerns about that?
So I think, based on the state, I think they're relying on us to do some training with families, and they would hope to support us with that on how to appropriately administer it at home. But I think that's a concern as well. Any other questions?
So right now, just to summarize, I think we're going to stay with the current protocols.
Yeah, I
and
think
then
we're gonna
we'll
stay with the
evaluate.
current protocols and, gather some data and information before we make a decision. Again, this was just, released on Tuesday, so it's a little bit of time to digest it. There was a webinar yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, or the day before, and, just to try to understand it a little bit better. And now that I think we have a better understanding, I think the next step is to do some surveys to our families and our community members, and then make a decision from there.
Sounds like we have 2 meetings too. We got February or March to
Yep.
kind of digest and evaluate everything. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next item on my agenda is to call up the Assistant Superintendent Principal, Mr. Michael Barton, who was the chair of our Spring 21 NEASC accreditation process, who is here tonight to give us an overview of the results of that accreditation process. And I'd just like to take a moment to thank Mr. Barton, as well as Mr. Versalone, who's unable to be here this evening, who was the co-chair, as well as our staff members and administrators who were part of the steering committees, for all the hard work that they put into the reports and the interviewing. And I think we received a good report. So Mr. Barton is here to summarize what we do here at Greater Lowell and how the committee observed that. Thank you.
So good evening, everyone. So just a little background before we begin. This process was a quite time-consuming process. This started close to 3 years ago, believe it or not, with the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. So NEASC stands for the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. It's a organization that's been around for about 100 years. What their main mission is to accredit public schools to work in private schools. They have many schools throughout Massachusetts, throughout New England. There are some schools across the country, and there's some actual international schools. Basically, this organization seeks to evaluate and to critique and to provide their standard of equitable, high-quality education throughout throughout the schools that they accredit. They spend a lot of time and effort visiting schools to ensure that they have the standards of accreditation that we meet. So essentially, we were visited last spring by a number of people, 2 people in person and a number of people online. The names were Nikki Menounos and Gilda Pertudio, 2 representatives from the Connecticut Technical Education and Career System in Hartford, which is really their Department of Ed, as well as the chairperson or head of mathematics from Norwich Technical High School. They were the co-chair and chair. They visited the school, and they spent some time here visiting our school, meeting with us, and they conducted the program entirely online. As I said, this process started nearly 3 years ago, so you can see the former superintendent's name is up there. That's something that the NEAS chair said that they were going to keep the org chart as it was at the time when they published the report. I guess it's their policy. So you'll see the titles haven't changed. But the reason I put the slide up is because it gives you a really good sense of how this accreditation process encompassed virtually everybody in the entire school system. The top, you can see I chaired it, and I co-chaired it with Mr. Versalone, Dean of Students, who did an admirable job. He did a incredible job in this effort. Below that, you can see that there's a number of steering committees. Those steering committees are all encompassing in our school community. So you see things on there such as there's an assessment committee, there's a core values and expectations committee, curriculum steering committee, instruction steering committee, culture and leadership, student services and support, school finance and community relations. So you can see the 3 people's names there. They are the people who chaired the committees. But I can assure you that within that, there were teacher representatives from both technical and academic programs. So the committee is comprised of people between 5 people all the way up to 8 or 9 people. And that's just for the steering committee. So what NEAS does is they publish a whole big report of standards, and we go through those standards based on those topics in the steering committee and really reflect and take a look at our school community, what we do well, what we could do better. We look to provide evidence on, if we say we're doing something well, we look for evidence to prove that. So that's just the steering committee part. Below that, you can see that there are also academic self-study committees. So there's one for every academic department. And then there's a technical self-study. So there's a committee for literally every single technical program. So it's really kind of a mammoth project. I mean, the report itself was close to 800 pages. So what we do is we submit that report to the chair and co-chair from Connecticut, and then there's other members from different communities throughout New England, and they read the report. And then if it was a non-COVID year, they would come and visit us in person. But in this instance, they came online, and we coordinated that online. So not only did we meet them online and interview them and talk with them, but we also used GoPros throughout the building so that they could see the school and they could see the students that were here last spring. They could interview teachers and see our environment. So it was quite a process that was delayed a few times because of COVID. But as the superintendent said, it was a project that was all encompassing for everyone, and everyone really worked well together and brought everything together to create a really good report that was, honest, descriptive, cohesive, and reflective, because there's things that we could improve on. So in terms of things that we did well, and what things that we could, improve on, we'll take a look at that. So the NEAS committee puts out commendations, so things that they want to commend us, sort of give us the thumbs up. The first thing that they recognized were our core values. They appreciated, first of all, that we had core values. They appreciated the core values of respect, effort, accountability, commitment, and honesty. And the interesting thing about it was they had went out of their way to comment that the students that had been interviewed, because there were students that are interviewed in this process too, commented that They understood the core values. They were able to talk about the core values. They were able to talk about the relationship between learning core values and how they bring them into their community in terms of co-op and work in the classroom. We also had a number of discipline issues that had been reduced in many areas and office referrals that we feel we can attribute to the core values that we have embedded. So they did some pretty extensive interviewing and some pretty extensive research and looking at the data, and that was the first commendation that they had for us. The second one, which I think we should be really proud of, is the welcoming and inclusive culture that supports high expectations for teaching and learning within a safe and positive environment. They were really impressed by the environment that we've cultivated here, the environment dedicated toward learning and having kids work in their trade areas, as well as the opportunity to go on co-op, as well as all of the different chances to be in co-op. They really appreciated the courses that we offer, different levels of courses, the remedial courses that we offer. The large number of shops was something that I think they were shocked at and really astonished by. So they wanted to signify that to us, so they put that as number two. They were also commented on all of the security that we have here, even though they weren't on campus. They can see the commitment to security and safety through our SROs, our school security team, as well as just the physical plant as well. The third commendation was the wide range of programs that we offer in terms of summer programs, after school programs, the RISE program that we have for students who are transitioning back from hospitalizations, the TOPS program, MCAS boot camps that we offer. They just were pretty impressed with how we're using our budget and we're using our personnel to create environments beyond 7:30 to 2 o'clock. Things that are happening after school, things that are happening on the weekend, kids that can't come to school have home tutoring, some of the online courses we offer. Not all schools have the opportunity to do that, but also not all schools go above and beyond to offer those programs. So they were pleased to see that, and they commended on us on this. The fourth one is oriented to all of you here. They were very impressed and very lauded our district's governing body, the school committee, who's consistently providing dependable funding to support the school's mission, as well as the towns and cities that fund us. They were very impressed with the specificity of the budget, the clarity of the budget, as well as the commitment to support our school programs from this body here. So they commended us for that as well. So before I head on to the recommendations, if anyone have any questions for commendations, I don't want to talk too much and go forward too quickly.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, that it's did a great job. And in the past, we've been involved in the accreditation before. I know we weren't involved in this time. That they used to.
I think it was because it was during the pandemic that usually the welcoming dinners and all that you would have been involved in were not.
But I mean, the NEAC itself used to meet with the school board members for us to give input in the past, you know what I mean? And as a former educator, I also went through it also. But I think to be able to have done what the school environment from the top down have done an excellent job, and that to be commended, and like I said, it looks like they have recommendations also.
Yeah, they do.
So
Just to touch on the involvement of the committee, as the chair, I said to the visiting chair and chair that anyone who you would like to speak to from the school committee or any from the local town or parents or anyone like that, I can certainly arrange that and I can include that. They didn't indicate that they wanted to speak to anyone at that time. To be very frank with you, I think because they were doing something online and they were trying to coordinate that, I think that was a real big effort on their part.
I I think it's outstanding because, you know, it's because of COVID,
Oh, yeah, it was
how it had to be handled.
quite unbelievable.
Then, you know what I mean? And I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, we know that by looking at all the people involved, there are people that are retired now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Correct.
mean? So they started it 3 years ago until you finish, you know? So.
Yeah. Thank you.
With the GoPro cameras, I mean, sometimes you need ingenuity to go ahead and make things work, so.
They were quite impressed with that.
I'm sure, I'm sure.
I think
Whoever done that.
rightfully so.
Yeah.
So recommendations. So their first recommendation is to create and implement a plan to provide sufficient space to address overcrowding issues due to increased enrollment. So as you know, we're always looking at areas that we can revamp, we can reassess. You can see, obviously, I don't need to tell this committee that we've done that considerably over the last several years.
Oh, yeah.
And as well as we're looking at other classroom spaces, both within the physical plan, perhaps outside of the physical plan. So that's something that I think was one that they obviously suggested. So that's something I know that's really on everyone's agenda to examine. The second one was to continue to work in curriculum updating, included use of common assessments and school-wide writing and associated rubrics. As the former director of curriculum instruction and assessment, they were pleased with a lot of the work that we've done in terms of scope and sequence writing, in terms of creating common assessments so that all teacher level curriculum teams are using common assessments. Frankly, I think that's one that would probably be on there every year because I think there's always time to review that and reflect on that every school year. So that's on there.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Do they have any suggestions on how to increase the plan to do?
Believe it or
Because
not,
that's just the general, and we've been funding that for a long time.
it's interesting that you asked that. Believe it or not, their mission is actually just to recommend, not really to
Give us solutions?
Give us solutions. You'll see that in the report that there's sort of identified areas and recommendations, but it's not as though they're giving you a blueprint on how to do that. And I think they're actually trained to do that way. And they're also not necessarily supposed to recommend certain financial things, even though obviously that's a financial thing. I think they're supposed to not necessarily, I think they're cautioned at that, believe it or not. So the next one is to create opportunities for instructors to collaborate on best practices, both in discipline and across disciplines to promote school-wide learning expectations. They were looking at things like common planning time, so common scheduling time. So teachers who teach the same subject can have the same period off. That's always something that we try to do when we can do it, given the complexity of the schedule here. They're also looking for continued time after school within cluster time meetings so that teachers can work together so that they can learn from each other and meet with each other. The third one is, again, to look at common assessments both in trade and academic areas to support vertical and horizontal aligned curriculum. That's one that I think, again, similar to the curriculum, will be on there for a number of years because it's just good practice to look at your assessments every year to keep on moving along so that you don't use the same thing for a number of years. And you always want to try to be imaginative and be fresh.
So, Mike, that was one of the things I had written because it's the second time I've seen the same thing. That during the DESE walkthrough in 19, they said basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have like a plan or a plan in place to try to? I know it's a technical school and we're trying to make academic with the TOPS programs by kids. Do we have anything in place to make this go away? I know it's never going to go away. It says, so like the 2019 walkthrough with DESE, it just came, it came out to address the same thing, that the academic and technical aren't aligned. And then I'm looking at this saying it's not, the academic and trade areas aren't supported vertically and horizontally. And,
So
I
I think
to support
they're
each other.
talking about integration, so that's something that we're going to look at, and how do we create time that academic and technical can integrate more.
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking. Do we have something,
Yeah.
but we're gonna get something in place to
Yeah.
try to do that?
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think, we had a literacy action team that was working in that direction, and, then that was sort of,
Again, it's on the back.
that was sort of, not in the vision of a former superintendent.
I get it.
So it is now in our vision again. We have a literacy action team, and they're gonna be working on a common writing rubric, which you saw in there. And they're also gonna be working on, with integration and how to embed academics into technical and vice versa. We have a plan to open up school this year with some integration work. Our teachers have been asking for it, so we're gonna open up school for the coming school year with some PD on integration and giving them that time. So, yeah, so we do have a plan using our literacy action team, using coaching to help to embed integration into, back into what we do.
Sounds like good vision to me, Ms. Davis.
Not exactly, Mike, great job. Great job to
Yeah,
everybody
thank
who's
you.
involved.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously, they're gonna find something.
Yeah,
That's
well,
what they have.
and they asked for recommendations, and I would support those recommendations. I think that
I
they're
think the
valuable.
biggest thing is, right now, is the commendation about us being a welcoming, receptive, and inclusive school community. I think they really were impressed with that. They really were impressed with our extracurriculars, our targeted support, our athletics, the fact that we don't provide user fees, and we have buses to take kids home if they want to stay after school and participate in sports is not seen in every school district. So they were very impressed that we tried to include everyone and provide as much as we can for our students.
See, I think when I was a student, I always wanted to know, why is geometry on the curriculum? All right, and then you start doing some carpentry, and
Right.
you gotta figure out the rafter and so forth. And I think maybe the two can kind of, the academic side with the technical side can kind of cross over and say, well, this is where your geometry applies. And that helps reinforce the education process.
Absolutely.
And everybody can improve on that from beginning to end.
But it's back to
And
Mike's.
that helps you as a student, because that was always my biggest gripe, is I'm never gonna use this, and then all of a sudden you show up and you're trying to cut a rafter, you use it.
I think, obviously, to you, everybody in here, great job. I've been through a couple of these, in town, and, is there any financial gain to this once it's all done? Like, getting accredited, does it have any financial bearing on us? Do we gain grants? If you didn't get accredited, would you lose?
No, if you
grants?
didn't get accredited, you'd have to shut your doors. But do we gain more because we're accredited? No.
It is helpful, though, for us accreditation when kids apply to college or when
Yeah, you have to be
when you want
an
grants and things like
accredited
that.
school.
Years ago, there was talk about some districts just not doing this anymore, because again,
Yeah.
800 pages.
There has been.
That is a ton of work, already on a
It's
ton of
over
work.
the years.
Well,
It's
again, that's a ton of work on a ton of work that everybody's doing.
in the middle of COVID.
Like, am I advocating
Right,
for not
that's-
doing this? It's just questions. Like, would we lose money if we didn't do this? I'm not saying I don't want to do this, but I'm saying, you just did an
I
800
think
page
you could
report.
lose reputation,
Over 3
credibility.
years.
I think it's a great question. I think a couple ways I would answer that. Number one, I think it's sort of a standard that you need to have, right? That you want to be an accredited NEAS-related school. So I think it's something that's an expectation that everyone has. Secondly, though, to your point, Department of Ed requires a lot of similar things from us in terms of things that they've asked, things that are in the report. And it has been raised by, I think, other school committee members in other towns, like, okay, so we're doing the ask, we're paying some fees for this, but we're also asked by the Department of Ed to do the same things. So it's a question that's come up. But I think, to the superintendent's point, it's sort of a standard that you have to have, especially if, to ensure your reputation and to ensure the quality and integrity of your programs.
No, I completely understand that. I mean, hey, Greater Lowell Tech has a great reputation. It's just go to the point of it's 800 pages. Because you guys did a ton of work. You're already doing a ton of work because you're being put through hell with COVID and things like that. Again, like to my previous comment, I mean, great job, everybody.
It's also a
Thank you.
learning opportunity for us to really put on paper, to see what we're doing great, and then to see what we can improve on. So, we look at it as a learning opportunity.
Yeah, it is, and
It's a lot of work. but-
it is an incredible amount of writing, an incredible amount of editing, and just the paperwork alone. I can applaud Jen Briere, my secretary. I could not have done this without her.
Yeah.
But I think, as the superintendent said, it gives you the opportunity to meet together, to talk with each
Yeah, of
other,
course,
kind of
right.
look at what you do well, what you could do better, and reflect, which is a good thing. And it's a real, as you see, 800 pages. It's a comprehensive effort to do that, and everyone's involved.
And it really was a school community effort.
It really
So
is.
The whole school community should be.
Yeah, everyone, I guess, has a voice in this if they want to, and if they want to have a larger voice, they can do that by jumping on one of the committees if they want to.
And this is every 10 years, correct?
So it's every
We'll be
10 years.
responding in 5.
Every 10, and then the 5-year period, they come back and they ask you to kind of report out where you are and how you're doing and that sort of
Responding to
thing.
their recommendations.
Yeah.
So if it's every 10
We've already
years,
started.
every 10 years, are there things that we do during that course and build for the next one?
Yeah. So
Or do we wait?
No, we
go-
don't wait.
no.
So
So
a year, there's something every year, right?
yeah, we work on their recommendations and we work on the
We
commendations.
started already.
Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at
The
space.
data teams
we're
we
doing
have,
a
the action
space
team we have.
study.
Yeah.
We're doing things already.
Okay.
No, thank you very much.
And you're doing a space study,
We are.
and we've taken on more students now than we ever have
Yes,
in
we
the time
have.
that I've been here. And we've really added additional classrooms and created more space for students, with space that we didn't have. And I'm sure we shared all of that with NEASC. So my question becomes is how come overcrowding became something that they recommend, even though your team has shared that this has been a constant that we have constantly been improving on? How does sort of that come about? How does that become a recommendation when you've already been sort of doing things forward?
I think
progress
that throughout their time here, there must have been some recommendations about making a better use of facility to alleviate overcrowding from some people's perceptions.
Yeah, to keep the 6 feet distance.
Well,
Let's
not
ask this
just the
question
6 feet
during
distance.
COVID.
I think over the years, we've been hearing about class size,
Yeah,
in space.
yeah, you hear about not so much the actual class size of certain classes, but other classes you hear that, or the physical space. I mean, I hear electrical wants larger space. They ask me pretty frequently, can we have this classroom? Can we would like this, and this. I mean, it's a, it's a balance, between things.
So-
And I'm not saying
So we're
electrical doesn't need
trying
it.
to look at every bit of space that we have in the
Right.
building.
And we've
And I'm not
always done
saying,
And technical is in a very high demand, and people want technical educations these days. And so it's common knowledge out there that we're space confined in most all of these schools.
I'm not sure it is common knowledge about the restrictions that we have because of the size of our shops. I'm not sure people really understand.
Really?
Yeah.
And I guess that brings me to my next question, which is, vocational schools are sort of under the microscope of the state. And I think every vocational school is trying to take in as many students as they can because they're sort of denying many applications that come in because they don't have enough space. But we're all filling up. So my question is there overcrowding? Is this a sort of a blanket term that NEASC is using about overcrowding that's happening with vocational schools across the state because there isn't enough space for all the applicants that come in?
No, I think the information that NEAS gathered was in reports and in feedback that they got from school community members.
From the overall team.
Yes.
There's been a couple of times that I've heard that the governor is making funds available for vocational schools as far as expanding, building. I think we've dealt with that before. Are we researching anything
So I
before
think,
all this is scooped up by somebody else, or?
are we
Is there
researching?
something we might be interested in if he's making it available across the Commonwealth?
So you mean another building project?
Well, it could be another building.
You have a book school.
So I can maybe ask Mr. Knight to step forward a minute to speak a little bit about that. About, there's a certain time frame before we could ask for another
Oh, is that,
building loan. I thought we talked about that before.
I think we did, but I just thought it was made available it was open up to everybody, and you just, you know, speak up, and it was like millions and millions of dollars available.
Yeah.
So I just didn't want to be left out if in fact we could, if there's anything we need.
So I think some of that was outside of the school building, money if you wanted to rent a property outside. I would need to clarify that with Mr. Knight. Mike, do you want to come up a minute?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Sorry,
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mr.
Well,
Byron.
that's a nice segue into the report of the business manager,
Yeah,
right?
right.
I'll be next on the agenda.
Yeah.
But in
Yeah.
speaking to space, what we've been working on, and I think we've got some good headway moving at the moment, is
I didn't
the American Recovery
Yeah.
Plan provided the big influx of money to the school. The state also introduced the Student Opportunity Act simultaneously. So we kind of took it two different directions last year. We were getting, what they're saying is a guaranteed increase to our operational budget on the annual, or every year for the next 6, to the tune of $1.5-ish million, which is going to be a significant increase for us and help us to expand programs, add staff, replace equipment, do all the great things that we do around here. But simultaneously, we got hit with about $8 million in ARP funds. So building isn't really, limited in the ARP funds. So what we're looking at is the potential availability of using those ARP funds to make an expansion on the building or repurpose space within the building. I had a preliminary walk with an architect about 2 weeks ago. And we're diving deeper into a couple of the areas that we explored. And then we're going to look at, the operational side, having these, expected increases from the state being able to support the staff that we'll need within the new building spaces and the new spaces we develop within or outside of the current physical plan. So we're making some good headway, at least on that recommendation. And not to put the cart before the horse or give you too much before the big unveiling, but I anticipate that we'll have something either coming into the summer or very early next fall for something that's a real concrete plan around what that could look like, assuming the committee approves and likes the ideas that we're looking at.
So we're doing our homework.
Good.
Would it be a square feet thing? Or would it be repurposed?
You just gotta throw, don't you?
No, why would I?
We're doing a combination of both right now. When we walked the building, we looked at spaces that were maybe underutilized. We don't have many left.
Very minimal.
But there's a couple of spaces here and there, or, to be fair, we even looked at this room. We said, could we, section off half of the meeting space? Unfortunately, there's this huge foyer out that way, so we really can't cut out of this room one way, so it became sort of a landlocked, for lack of better terms, area. But, we looked within the building, but I think, at this point, our biggest opportunity is probably expansion on the plant in some way. That obviously makes things much more expensive because there's going to be fire suppression and heat, restrooms potentially, nursing areas, those types of things that need to come with an expansion. So it's not the lowest cost option, but like I said, when we looked around the building, there's a couple of low-hanging fruit left, but by and large, it was
Not a lot.
a pretty solid
Not a lot
undertaking to make any space usable. I even, we went as far as looking at those floors and said, could we, run steel beams across it, put a floor and make 4 offices or 3 offices in each, or a breakout space. For the amount of square footage you gain on something like that compared to the cost, we slowly moved away from some of those pretty quick because a lot of things are possible, but are they the best decision? So we did a pretty good walk a couple weeks ago. I got some preliminary feedback, and we're going to continue that process. And like I said, I really hope that at least coming into the summer or fall, we'll have a very strong preliminary plan that we'll be able to present and talk about, and then look forward to continuing on and hopefully having that move forward in a really expedient manner. Because ARP funds are limited by 3 years of availability, so we're through year 1 pretty much at this point, so we're gonna be built in 2 if we're gonna do anything.
And everyone's on top of their game, right? I like it, that's good.
And this is happening essentially statewide.
Well,
Is
I'm not
that fair to
sure
say,
what's happening
no?
statewide, but it's happening right
Vocational
here.
schools, okay, it's happening here.
I think some vocational schools are looking to expand if they have not already or had renovations, but I can't speak for everyone.
I think we were in a
Gonna
unique
speak for us.
situation being a fairly newly renovated
Yeah,
school. A lot of the demons that other schools or issues that other people had,
We don't have those
we
issues.
really don't, because by and large everything was taken care of finishing up in 2016. So we didn't have a 100-year-old school in downtown
We
that
happen to be lucky.
needed a new boiler. So because of that, there was I think more opportunity for us to look at that, where other districts and cities and schools weren't maybe poised to move in that direction.
See, Mike, I'd just like to think we maintain what we have. I'll take the shot at the high school. They don't know how to maintain this stuff, we maintain it, so.
On the old renovation project, when we did do the renovation, were there things that were eliminated from the plan
Nothing
initially that we could call back?
So nothing was value engineered out of
Can't even
the
think.
construction project, as far as I know. Everyone I've talked to said we actually ended up coming under budget
We
and
did.
underspending the full grant amount. So it wasn't at that time that we, were pressed financially and said we couldn't do.
No,
I can't even think of what
in
we
fact,
couldn't
we
have
did
done.
more with
In
the
fact, we
addition
did a
of the
lot more with
The
cafe.
cafe,
Yeah,
the cafe, the pool renovation got
pool.
thrown
Pool
into
gets
that
thrown into
fund.
When Matt was a student here, I mean, you remember, we had 3 dining halls.
yeah.
Those became classrooms.
Yeah, the east and west.
Yeah, east and west, yeah.
Yeah, the east and west, those are labs now.
West had the best tacos.
It was Taco Bell, actually.
That's what, exactly, it had Taco Bell, yes. It was the best, you only went in the west.
After
I'm
3 or
giving
4.
myself away here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Well, thank you very much for that.
Thanks, man.
hey, Rich,
Those are staying
that
out
was
there.
John Dak, this is Low Five.
Low Five has better.
Thank you,
Yeah, they
I'm
do.
sorry for putting you
Thank
on
you.
the spot there.
Right,
Thank you, continue on.
We'll move to my first item on the business manager's report is a request to declare some
We haven't got
older equipment out of the graphics and design and visual departments as surplus and move to disposal. So they have an older 3-hole press drill that was made by Challenger, and a Honor stitching machine that they've used for embroidery down in those shops. I can speak to the drill press because I used it for my budget books. There are safety issues, there are safety measures that aren't functioning appropriately with that piece of equipment anymore, so I'm not
Probably
sure.
written. It's old.
It could be. It could be. It's definitely older than me. Well,
They usually last a while.
yeah, and it functions, but the pedals don't work, some of the other
Wanting to
stuff.
discard this old stuff, is there meaning to that?
No, not at all. Just, I'm trying to get
It's
everyone
aging out,
up to speed,
Phasing
and,
out.
yeah.
and we have this conversation pretty frequently, actually, even today, in talking with another building project. We go through shops sometimes, and some people like to hold on to things, and maybe longer than they should. And
Time to clean up.
you get, eventually you end up with a corner of a classroom or a corner of a shop full of equipment that no one's using, and then people scratch their heads and say, well, I don't have space for the new stuff or what the new industry standard is. So I try to be a agent of change and assist in that process where necessary or where I can. But it's always with the intent of replacement or improvement of the program. So while the old stuff comes out, new stuff is going in, and it's already keyed up and ready to go.
I'll move to make the motion to approve the disposal of the
Second,
challenge field question.
can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Morris?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare?
Maybe one.
George? Mr. O'Hare?
Mr. O'Hare, are you still there?
Still here, yes.
Okay, thank you, sorry. Maybe we need to speak closer to this microphone.
Mr. Lemay?
Okay.
There's a motion.
Now,
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
On the second item on my agenda tonight is a two-page list of transfers here. The majority of these items came about through our budget process. Again, we're always asking what needs to be upgraded for equipment, what needs to be purchased, basically what needs to get in the hands of the teachers to make sure the students learn effectively. So in my first budget transfer list, I did a lot of movement from salary accounts after contracts were settled and insurance projections were better, and moved it into the plant services account, kind of as a holding place, and because I knew we had some projects that we were working on through that department. So now that we've identified more supplies, materials, and other such items, we're going to be moving that money out of that plant services contract account now to make sure we can make those purchases and get the items to the classrooms.
Can I have a motion to approve the budget transfers totaling $480,501?
I actually have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I think the first question is line 24, an increase in the lifeguard salary.
Not an increase. We never used to actually employ our own lifeguard. It was through a contracted deal with the YMCA, I believe.
Yes.
Through COVID, they did not get the number of lifeguards that they had in the past and weren't able to provide one for us all the time. So we had to take it upon ourselves to recruit and find and hire a lifeguard. So we've not had this expense in the past. This is a new employee for the year.
It was in contractual, we had the expense through contractual.
Sure.
So it just got moved.
It just,
Rather than a contracted
So it's an added
service
cost.
to a salary.
no, it's,
It's a
Instead
transfer
of us paying
cost.
the YMCA,
It's a wash.
we're now paying
Yes.
our own
It's a wash.
yes,
lifeguard salary.
yes, we are.
Okay, so and the next question I have would be about the co-op student salary.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So guidance
With my
didn't,
kids.
guidance didn't previously have a co-op student working up there, but now they found an administrative role where a co-op student was able to fill in and help with their workload up there. So they've brought in a student to work in that department. And we'll probably see another transfer in the future because information technology picked up a couple of co-op students as well.
So that's something we did in the past here at Lowell. We've hired students on co-op and different people have different visions. I think it's important. I think it's great to give our students the experience, and if we have the opportunity here for a need, I think it's good that we hire
So I
them.
think it's great.
Yeah.
Is this one student or is this like a number of students?
Well, it's one for this department, and I think information technology has asked for, if I'm not mistaken, 2 students to help out. So, it's right now, it could be a total of 3 students.
One in co-op, one in information technology?
One in guidance and 2 in
over
information
19.
technology.
Okay, 3 more on top of.
And it's not information technology, it's the technology, it's, in Lisa Martinez's department, it's enrollment, media,
Okay, good information.
IT, our IT.
Good question.
It's nice to know.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing.
It's a great thing for our students, it's a great thing for our school. Cool.
May I have a motion? Second?
Second.
A roll call, please.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare?
yes,
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mike.
Any old business that wants to be discussed or brought up?
Well,
Any new business?
new business. I think maybe let's talk about the, March 17 school committee meeting.
Under new business?
Yeah, well, we can talk under old business or new business.
Comes up every year.
What is that?
Right,
School committee meeting.
It happens to be the night of St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
right. So I'm just saying if we could possibly move that meeting to either an earlier date or a later date. Whatever you
I
think.
don't have any issue.
Can we do the week after?
That would bring us towards the end of our budget season, is that correct?
This,
Right, so March 24th could actually work, so we could vote on our budget, and we wouldn't have to have a special meeting?
And we still have the COVID protocols that we can discuss, so that's timely.
Gives us some
I'm
time.
hoping to figure that out by February, maybe.
Okay.
I mean, we would still have time to have the budget approved and distributed. We have to have that done at the very, very latest by April 13th. So, so long as we get a budget meeting in, a preliminary budget and finance meeting in at the February meeting, and then do our public hearing at the 24th.
24th, yeah.
Then we should be all set to have that approved in an appropriate timeline.
Okay,
Actually,
so with that being the case, moving it out a week,
31st is
I think it's a pretty good recommendation.
So do we have a motion and a second?
Mr.
Thank you,
Sheehan?
Mike.
I'll make the motion to move the March meeting to the 24th.
Okay, how about a second?
Yeah.
All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
yes,
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes. So we're taking care of the committeeman motions then, and then we're on to report of subcommittees.
Just on another business one thing. I just want to thank, Jill and Mike, on a Sunday handed out COVID test kits to all the staff. I just want to, that's their own time on a Sunday doing that. I just want to recognize them and thank them and everybody that participated in it because they took the time out of their own lives on a Sunday. And I understand that they're the superintendent, assistant superintendent, but still, they could have had somebody else hand that out. They did it themselves. So I just want to recognize them and thank them for doing that. I think, we just should, they should be recognized for it.
Well noted.
Thank you.
We appreciate both Mike and Jill.
Thank
And
you.
we do acknowledge they spend a great deal of time, especially with all that's been going on here at the school. And that's well thought. Thank you. I guess then we're on to, we gotta go to executive session. We're gonna need a motion to enter executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if in an open meeting may be detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Administrators, I'm gonna need a motion and then a second.
Are we gonna have to vote after, or can we
Yes,
just
we are.
adjourn after?
Yes, we are.
Okay, all right. A motion to go into executive session.
So then we'll have to come back out and take a vote.
Mm-hmm. And then conclude from there.
Right.
Second.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
I abstain.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.
Drop the check.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so I guess that concludes the meeting right now. And we'll have to come back and then we'll go into executive session. What do you want to take, about 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Lemay?
Yeah.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yep.
Mr. Getchia?
Yeah.
Mr. Bahu?
Here.
Mr. Tatsias? Mr. Gigi?
Yes. All right, can we have a motion to approve the memorandum of agreement between Greater Lowell Technical High School Committee and the Greater Lowell Technical High School Administrators Association? I'll need a motion and then a second.
So moved.
Second?
Second,
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare? Mr. Lemay?
yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
I abstain.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes. We have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. O'Hare? Mr. Lemay?
yes.
Mr. Sheehan?
Yes.
Mr. Getchia?
Yes.
Mr. Bahu?
Yes.
Mr. Gigi?
Yes.